In this video I'm going to explain the new trade zone functionality of the latest updates to the economy mod. Now normally if your ship was in the condition of this poor unfortunate fellows, you would try and limp to the nearest trade zone and buy a heap of iron or something like that. Obviously you go mining and everything, but that's not within the scope of this anyway. So we're trying to repair our ship. We're obviously run out of iron. Okay, so we buy some from the local NPC shop. Okay, next problem. NPC shop hasn't got anything left. Alright, well what if you need that iron somewhere else or you're nowhere near an NPC zone? Well, if you're a admin, you could add some extra zones for the players. That's pretty straightforward. You just now go to wherever you want the new place to be. And I've created a shortcut command here. That shows the current ones. So let's add another one. NPC zone space add here, then give it a name and the length that you want it to reach. Okay, now there's a new zone. There you go, one at the center of the map and one where we are now. You can also delete that. You just need to know the name of the zone. NPC zone delete and example, and now it's gone. Now NPC zones are all great if you're an admin, but it's not very fun for the players themselves. What if they want to run their own shop? Well, now they can. But the first thing the admin needs to do though is turn this function on. Within the game, type in econfig enable player trade zones on. This will now allow players to register trade zones. There's some other settings too, like the number of zones they're allowed to register and everything, but I'll go through that later. For a player to register a trade zone, he needs two things: enough money and a beacon to register it against. The player also needs to own the beacon as well, otherwise it'll reject the attempt to register, such as this example on screen here. The actual registration command is quite simple. It's just TZ register, the name of the zone and the size of the zone. Keep in mind, registering zones are quite expensive depending on the settings that the admins have set for registration. The really cool thing about these trade zones is they'll follow the beacon. You don't have to just build them on a station. The only catch is it has to be a large ship beacon, not a small ship one. When you register a trade zone, you can't immediately use it. It's set as closed. You can open and close these basically by turning the beacon on or off or typing TZ open and then the market name. Players need to make sure they protect these beacons, because if they're hacked or destroyed, it basically shuts down their market, which gives you an interesting gameplay sort of dynamic there. You can relink a destroyed market to a new beacon using the TZ relink, then the market name and a radius again, and that should relink it. It also costs money to relink to the beacon, but not as much as when you created the market to begin with. Now, adding stock to a player trade zone is pretty simple. You just basically treat it like an NPC zone and just sell into it from the inventory in your ship or in your backpack. So for example, we're just going to sell 100 steel plates here from the cargo of this ship we're in at the moment. And that will go into the inventory of your NPC market. If you haven't got anything, it'll obviously fail. So for example, if I try and put gold ingots into it, well, I haven't got any, so I can't. You can also change the prices of the items in your market. With that, you can use the TZ sell and buy commands. For example, watch the screen at the back. You'll see that the price has changed now to 50. You can also not buy or sell particular items. For example, gravel. No one wants to buy that, so you can blacklist that. It won't be available for people to buy or sell in your market. If, for example, you only want to buy a certain amount of a particular product and then stop buying anymore, you can also do that using the limit command. So here we're going to limit purchases of iron ingots to a maximum inventory of, I think it was 50,000? Yeah, 50,000. The next question you might have is what happens if a player's trade zone overlaps with an NPC trade zone? Well, at the moment, the NPC trade zone has priority. So if you're in a spaceship that's set as a trade zone, like the one this fellow's in at the moment, and we fly across the boundary from his zone into NPC zone, the NPC zone prices will then take control of the trade region for the moment until you leave that area again, in which case the ship will have priority again. Now this part isn't finished, but we added a couple of extra functions for players known as a HUD. Basically, what this does is it basically displays who you're playing for, how much money you've got, that sort of thing. Later on we want to make it display current missions and things like that, but at the moment it's just basically there as a gimmick. It's turned off by default, but you can turn it on by swiping /HUD and on. It wasn't just player trade zones that we tweaked up for commands in-game. We've also set it up so that you can change pricing and blacklists and things like that on the NPC markets if you're an admin as well. For example, if you want to change the buy price, say, of this item here, you can just use the set command if you're an admin. That applies to the current zone that you're in. Okay, so now it's the buy price of 12. We can also blacklist items like gravel, for example, so that the NPC market won't buy that anymore, although most people leave that on just to keep the gravel sort of junk to a minimum on most servers. Okay, once again we've done it in the same zone. Now, you can also set the sell price in all your NPC markets using an asterisk, not just the current one. So, for example, here I'm going to set the price of uranium ingots that they sell for to every NPC market. There's only one in this server, but if there was 12 of them, for example, all 12 of them would then change the sell price to 15. This is NPC though, not player markets. Keep that in mind. They're separate. You can also specify the name of a market specifically using quotes, like this example that we just did there. You can also change the name of your network. Like on mine it's Blue Mining by default, but you might have a different ARP role-playing name for your server's trade network. So you can do that with the econfig command. The econfig command lets you change a lot of settings. Be sure to check the manual out for that one. It's linked on our main mod page. So we've just changed the network name to monkeys, and of course that means we need to change the currency name from credits to something more appropriate to monkeys as well, say bananas. So now everyone's money is in bananas, basically. Actually, I've spelt that wrong. I'll type it right now. There we go, bananas. In addition to that, you can also turn off NPC trading altogether and just have player trading only. In that situation, given that we're on a spaceship with its own trade zone, that will take over the region that we're in because we've shut down the NPC trade once we turn this off. There we go. So now we'll pick up the spaceship's trade zone instead, and now it only works with players' trade. You can also change the language displayed on the LCDs, for example, to check by using the econfig language command. The country codes are listed on the manual as well. Now there's quite a lot of settings you can actually change using the econfig command if you're an admin. For example, the language as I just showed you then. You can also change the trade network name, which I also showed you. Let's see. There's a setting called limited range, which forces players to be near you when you trade with them. Limited supply, which basically means should NPC zones have limited or unlimited stock and money. You can turn on or off the LCD pricing display functions. You can turn off NCBCs, as I've said there. You can also disable or enable player trade zones, as I mentioned earlier. They're off by default, just so that when players upgraded their servers, they didn't magically get a feature where the players could trade in case they didn't want it. You can also disable the ability to pay players between each other, basically. So if you want to pay another player, you can turn that function off, so that you can only trade with the stations instead. You can also set the trade timeouts, how long it'll wait before it gives up on trades. Account expiry, how long it should wait before it purges out all the balances of a given player. Basically how long it's been since he's been logged on. The starting balance. Now, if you're disabling the NPC trade zones, you're probably going to need to increase your starting balance. Otherwise, there's going to be no sort of financial balance on your server, like where they get their money from, other than admins, basically. You can also set the maximum and minimum license prices as well. The price ratio of a relink to a player trade zone as compared to the price of generating a new one. It's just a price ratio, yeah. And the maximum number of trade zones that a single player is allowed to own can also be set. I also set the language options. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff that this mod can do. It's probably best if you check the manual out yourself in your own time. The link is on the main mod page if you need to see that anyway. I think a player also created a domain that links to it as well. I'll just on se-econ.com. That's se-econ.com. Anyway, thanks for listening to me rambling on about this mod, but yeah, check out the manual. It's got heaps of stuff on there that I've probably missed, and yeah, give our mod a go. Thanks.